Douglas is your bride, Dr. Douglas Weiss and Mrs. Weiss, who have been lovers for life and are now also husband and wife. Greetings. Now let me tell you that this time around, you folks sent in some pretty interesting material. It's true. Concerning Joni Lamb, in addition, it is about taking a critical look at some of the things that she has stated publicly about marriage and submission, particularly in light of her own personal experiences as well as the experiences of people who are close to her. Consequently, throughout this in-depth examination, we are going to make an effort to thoroughly dissect this and consider the problems that are raised by this event. It's true. As you are aware, with regard to the interaction of faith and public life and personal conduct, more especially concerning biblical marriage and divorce as well as the idea of submission, without a doubt, and you should know that this text is rather straightforward in terms of the stance it takes. It is not hesitant to kind of analyze any discrepancies, which is a very positive thing. In a nutshell, it outlines the biblical principles that pertain to marriage, and then it examines those principles in reference to key events that have occurred in her life as well as in the life of her current spouse. Let's take a step back and look at this from a different perspective. Furthermore, it begins with this comment that is credited to Joni Lamb, in which she is said to have informed Susie Lamb that she was not here for God. Exactly. Nevertheless, in order to serve today for somebody who is not familiar with, all of the intricacies that are there here, it can seem a little bit weird. The question is, what kind of weight or controversy may be associated with a remark such as that? Therefore, the most fascinating aspect of that remark, according to the interpretation provided by the source material, is the way in which it is connected to a certain interpretation of biblical submission. Exactly. As a result, the study seems to indicate that Joni Lamb's teachings place a strong focus on the primary duty of a woman being one of service within the context of the marital partnership. As a result, the potential for conflict comes when this emphasis on service and submission is then analyzed alongside her own life choices, which we will discuss in a little bit more detail later on. On the other hand, I believe it is essential to point out that the idea of biblical submission itself is a subject that may be interpreted in a variety of ways within the Christian communities. Indeed it is. Therefore, there is a spectrum of perspectives, ranging from hierarchical depictions of power to more egalitarian interpretations of mutual respect and service. Given this, it would appear that the text that was inserted operates according to a particular and maybe more conventional interpretation of this phrase. All right, in light of this, the book then switches its attention to Joni Lamb's first marriage to Marcus Lamb, the creator of Daystar Television Network. This is done in order to expand upon the concept of public perception and personal life that was presented before. In addition, they were genuine collaborators in the process of establishing this ministry. In a word, yes, Daystar was written by both of them together. Additionally, the identity of the network was significantly influenced by the interaction between the two of them. There is an acknowledgement of such common past in the source material, and the significant contributions that each of them made to the expansion and popularity of the organization. After then, the article discusses this extremely challenging time period, which was the time when Marcus Lamb publicly admitted to having an affair. Additionally, the text emphasizes that Joni Lamb chose to continue living in the marriage despite the fact that this was the case. Exactly. In addition, depending on their understandings of the teachings of the Bible, there are some individuals who could consider this to be a reason for separation. It's true. What's more, the source places a strong emphasis on that particular point. In this context, they are referring to Joni Lamb's decision to remain in the marriage despite Marcus Lamb's admission of having an affair earlier. There is a possibility that this decision may be seen by some as a profound dedication to the concept of a marriage that lasts a lifetime. Nevertheless, the analysis and the narrative kind of go in a different direction from this discovery, due to the fact that this causes us to advance in the timeline. Exactly. Additionally, the investigation highlights the fact that Joni Lamb remarried Doug Weiss following the loss of Marcus Lamb, and it appears that the source is giving the impression that this was a pretty brief period of time. It's true. This appears to be a crucial aspect of the entire criticism that has been presented. Indeed, it is. In particular, the source material draws attention to the amount of time that passed between the passing of Marcus Lamb and Joni Lamb's subsequent marriage to Doug Weiss. Exactly. Furthermore, the suggestion is that this timing is puzzling and raises issues. It's true. This is especially true when examined through the prism of the teachings that the Bible assigns to her on the stability of marriage. Furthermore, I believe that this kind of brings up this shared tension. You may find this even within talks about marriage in the Bible. Exactly. Exactly. You have the ideal of committing for the rest of your life. Moreover, there are the realities of being a widow, as well as the possibility of finding new companionship opportunities. As for the criticism, it is very evident that the wording that was pasted leans toward the former. All right. In addition, Doug Weiss himself is subjected to criticism over the course of this work. Exactly. The fact that he is a marriage counselor who has publicly expressed his opposition to divorce is also included in the article. At this point, things start to take a very intriguing turn. It's true. The text also mentions that Doug Weiss has gone through the process of getting divorced. Exactly. As a result, the issue is obviously complicated when we have prominent people who are being scrutinized for activities that appear to be in conflict with the ideas that they have professed to hold. This raises the question of what kinds of demands and expectations are placed on those in positions of authority. It's true. And this is one of the most important aspects of the criticism. It's true. A very sharp contrast is shown between Doug Weiss's public function as a marriage counselor who recommends against divorce and the one that he plays in the public consciousness. Exactly. And the fact that he has a personal experience of divorce. Exactly. Moreover, this seeming discrepancy is presented as a key cause for anxiety among the audience. Therefore, when we take into account all of these findings, we can see that the source is essentially asking some very straightforward questions. It's true. To give you something to think about, it poses the following question: does Joni Lamb's remarriage connect with the ideas that she preaches about biblical submission and marriage that lasts a lifetime? Exactly. And does Doug Weiss's own divorce pose any legitimate concerns, taking into consideration his line of work and the statements he has made in public? Without a doubt. This critical review of the congruence between the public teachings and the private lives of these significant persons within the Christian community is encouraged by the book, which frames these concerns as particularly important and encourages them to be evaluated critically. In addition to this, it compels us to reflect on the expectations that we have for individuals who are in positions of authority. Also, the analysis extends beyond the scope of this particular situation. Additionally, it seems to imply that there is a larger pattern of what it considers to be hypocrisy throughout the leadership of the Christian community. And the idea is that there are situations in which leaders appear to enforce stringent standards on their followers, while at the same time maybe functioning with greater freedom when it comes to their own lives. It's true. In my opinion, if we connect this to a more comprehensive understanding of the dynamics of society, the source seems to hint at a potential dynamic in which certain leaders may interpret or apply principles in ways that appear to accommodate their personal circumstances, while at the same time expecting a more rigid adherence from those that they lead. Furthermore, the concept of leaders rewriting their own tales is an intriguing one in this context, as it suggests that there may be a gap between the narrative that is offered to the public and the reality that lie under the surface. In addition, the language gives the impression that the author is of the opinion that there is a rising awareness of these seeming contradictions, as well as a sense that norms of conduct ought to ideally apply consistently regardless of one's position. This notion is absolutely conveyed by the source, which is that individuals are increasingly analyzing the alignment between the signals that their leaders are sending and the actions that they are taking. This demonstrates that there is a rising feeling of critical engagement among followers, as well as a need for greater authenticity and integrity in those who hold positions of religious leadership. Furthermore, the article comes to a close by presenting what it considers to be some significant issues. The need of maintaining consistency between one's life and the teachings that are conveyed is emphasized by this. In addition, it brings up the issue of who is responsible for the decisions that Christian leaders make in their personal lives. Furthermore, what is notable about this situation is the direct involvement with you, the listener, which prompts personal thinking on these complicated problems. In addition, it urges a serious evaluation of the expectations that we have for religious leaders and the obligation that they have to live the ideas that they fight for. As a result, in order to summarize what we have learned from this text that has been pasted, it emphasizes the apparent contradiction that exists between Joni Lamb's public teachings on marriage and obedience and her later remarriage following the death of her first husband. Furthermore, it brings to light a similar scenario with Doug Weiss, a marital counselor who preaches against divorce yet has personally been through the experience of divorce. Furthermore, the research shows that these instances may be indicative of possible double standards within Christian leadership, and it asks for a stronger alignment between beliefs and actions. Exactly the same. The apparent mismatch between expressed convictions and experienced reality is the focus of the investigation, which centers on this perceived discrepancy. It is important to note that the source material does not offer conclusive solutions, rather it gives these insights and issues for your contemplation, and with that I would want to bring to your attention a pretty significant subject that you should think about. What does it imply for people and communities when prominent figures, particularly religious leaders, are subjected to examination about the degree to which their lives coincide with the views that they have publicly stated? This study that we have studied in this source provides the answer to this question. Is it really necessary to have this kind of accountability, or does it have the ability to go beyond a certain limit? It's true, there are a lot of things to consider in this regard, indeed it is. In addition, we hope that this in-depth examination of the subject matter has offered some insightful food for thought. In a word, yes, we are grateful that you have joined us. It's true, many thanks for submitting this to us. This was a really worthy one, something that is very fascinating. It's true, to add insult to injury, Ed, we always make an effort to offer a fair perspective on this matter, and this is a highly sensitive subject. Simply said, we want to encourage everyone to listen to this with an open mind and come to their own judgments about what they hear. In a word, yes, reflect critically on the information that you are taking in, exactly the same, as well as develop your own thoughts. It's true. Additionally, if you would like to send in additional material that may offer a different point of view on this matter, we will always be satisfied to receive it. We do, and we are constantly searching for other points of view. Give us a heads up, and we'll do our best to incorporate it into a subsequent in-depth analysis. In a word, yes, again, I am grateful to you for listening, and that will be the next time we see you. I will see you again soon. Goodbye.